This is my true story. I am Miss Geneva Carter, 65 years old. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Because what I'm about to share is a lesson in fear, courage, and the fierce love of a grandmother who refused to look away. It was just after 4 in the morning when I woke to the sound of footsteps creaking above my head. The kind of sound that makes your heart race even before your mind catches up. I was staying at my daughter Rochelle's house, helping with the grandkids while her husband Darius was between jobs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of my grandchildren in the next room. But something felt wrong. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake the little ones, and padded down the hallway, my slippers barely making a sound on the old wooden floor. The basement door was cracked open, a thin line of light spilling out onto the landing. I heard voices, Darius's low and angry, Rochelle's trembling and pleading. I crept closer, my heart pounding, and peered down the stairs. What I saw made my blood run cold. Darius was standing in the middle of the basement, surrounded by boxes I'd never seen before, a locked trunk at his feet. Rochelle was crying, her hands shaking as she tried to reason with him. Darius, please, we can't keep doing this. What if Mama finds out? What if the kids see? Darius snapped back. You keep your mouth shut, Rochelle. This is our only way out. You want those kids to eat, don't you? He was holding a wad of cash, his knuckles white, and I saw my granddaughter's favorite teddy bear sticking out of the trunk. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run down the stairs and grab Rochelle, but I forced myself to stay hidden to listen. Darius started stuffing the cash into a duffel bag, muttering about the next drop, and nobody's going to miss a few things. Rochelle tried to reach for the trunk, but Darius shoved her away. You're not strong enough to do what needs to be done. That's why I'm in charge. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I'd always known Darius was trouble, but I'd never imagined it was this bad. I slipped back to my room, my mind racing. I had to get the kids out, but I couldn't let Darius know I'd seen anything. I packed a small bag with snacks, water, and the kids' favorite toys, my hands shaking as I worked. I texted my best friend Miss Lila, using our old code from back when we were girls. Red sky at morning. She replied instantly. I'm on my way. I woke the kids as gently as I could, whispering that we were going on a little adventure. Rochelle met me in the hallway, her eyes red and swollen. Mama, what are we going to do? I hugged her tight. We're going to run, baby. We're going to run, and we're not going to look back. As we crept out the back door, I heard Darius's voice upstairs shouting for Rochelle. My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept moving, clutching the kids' hands in mine. We slipped through the neighbor's yard, hiding behind the old oak tree until Miss Lila's car pulled up, headlights off. We piled in, Rochelle sobbing quietly, the kids clinging to me. As we sped away, I looked back at the house, the basement light still burning, and whispered a prayer for strength. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I would do whatever it took to protect my family. And as the sun began to rise, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run, especially when you know what's waiting in the dark. We drove in silence for a long while, the only sound the hum of Miss Lila's old sedan and the soft whimpers of my grandchildren in the back seat. Rochelle sat beside me, her hands clenched in her lap, staring out the window as if she could still see the house shrinking behind us. I kept glancing at the kids in the rearview mirror. Little Jamal clutching his teddy bear, eyes wide and confused, and baby Nia sucking her thumb, her curls wild and tangled. My heart ached for them, for Rochelle, for all the years I'd tried to believe that Darius would change. Miss Lila finally broke the silence, her voice gentle but firm. Geneva, you did the right thing. I've seen men like Darius before. They don't stop until someone stands up to them. I nodded, but my mind was racing. Where would we go? How would we keep safe? I knew Darius would be furious when he realized we were gone. I pulled out my phone and texted my neighbor, Mr. Henry, asking him to keep an eye on the house and let me know if Darius came looking. He replied almost instantly, "Don't worry, Miss Geneva. I'll watch out for you." We pulled into Miss Lila's driveway just as the sky was turning pale blue. She ushered us inside, locking the doors behind us, and made a pot of strong coffee while Rochelle and I settled the kids on the couch with blankets and cartoons. Rochelle's hands were still shaking as she poured herself a cup. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I was scared. Darius said if I ever left, he'd find us. He said nobody would believe me." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "You don't have to be scared anymore, baby. We're safe now. And you're not alone." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and for the first time in years, I saw my daughter as the little girl she used to be, brave but so very tired. I promised myself I would never let her or the kids go back to that house. After breakfast, I called a women's shelter I'd heard about at church, explaining our situation. The woman on the other end of the line was kind and understanding, promising to find us a place to stay by the end of the day. "You did the right thing, Miss Carter. We'll help you get back on your feet." I thanked her, relief flooding through me. But even as I tried to focus on the next steps, my phone buzzed with a new message, this time from Darius. "Where are you? Bring my kids back or you'll regret it." My hand shook as I showed the message to Miss Lila, who took my phone and blocked his number. "He can't hurt you here," she said, her voice fierce. "We'll call the police if he tries." That afternoon, Rochelle and I packed a few more things, careful not to let the kids see our fear. We told them we were going on a little vacation, that Grandma and Mama would keep them safe. Jamal nodded solemnly, his teddy bear clutched tight, while Nia just smiled and reached for my hand. As the sun set, the shelter called back with good news. They had a room for us and a counselor who could help Rochelle and the kids start to heal. We loaded up the car, hugging Miss Lila tight, and drove off into the night, hope flickering in my chest like a candle in the dark. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never let fear or shame keep me from protecting my family again. And as we pulled into the shelter's parking lot, I whispered a prayer of thanks for Miss Lila, for the strength I'd found, and for the chance to start over. But deep down, I knew Darius wasn't finished. The real fight was just beginning, and I was ready to face it, whatever it took. The shelter was nothing like I'd imagined. It was warm and clean, with soft lights and the gentle hum of women's voices drifting down the hallway. The staff welcomed us with open arms, offering fresh sheets, a hot meal, and a quiet room at the end of the hall. Rochelle clung to my side, her eyes darting around as if she expected Darius to burst through the door at any moment. The kids, though tired, seemed to sense the safety in the air. Jamal curled up on the bed with his teddy bear, and Nia fell asleep in my lap before I could even finish humming her favorite lullaby. That first night I barely slept, my mind replaying the scene in the basement over and over. I kept seeing Darius's face, the trunk, the cash, the way Rochelle's voice trembled with fear. I wondered how long she'd been living like this, how many times she tried to protect the kids on her own. I felt a wave of guilt for not seeing the signs sooner, for believing Darius's empty promises and letting my daughter suffer in silence. The next morning, a counselor named Miss Angela met with us, her voice gentle but full of purpose. She listened as Rochelle told her story, tears streaming down her face as she described the threats, the control, the bruises she tried to hide. Miss Angela nodded, taking notes, and promised to help us file for a restraining order and start the process of documenting everything we'd seen. "You're not alone anymore, Rochelle. We'll help you every step of the way." I squeezed Rochelle's hand, pride and sorrow mingling in my chest. Later that day, I called Mr. Henry, my neighbor, to check on the house. "Darius has been by twice," he whispered. "He's angry, Geneva. He's asking everyone if they've seen you." I told him nothing. I thanked him, my heart pounding, and promised to keep him updated. That afternoon, the shelter's legal advocate helped us gather all the evidence I'd collected. Photos of the basement, the list with the kids' names, the threatening messages from Darius. She explained that the authorities would need everything to build a case, and that it was important to stay hidden until the restraining order was in place. That night, as I tucked Jamal and Nia into bed, I felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it nearly brought me to tears. I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "Grandma's got you. Nobody's going to hurt you now." Rochelle sat beside me, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama, do you think we'll ever be free of him? I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. We will, baby. We just have to keep moving forward one day at a time. As the lights dimmed and the shelter grew quiet, I lay awake, listening to the steady breathing of my family, and promised myself that I would never let fear win again. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that Darius was still out there, watching, waiting for his chance to strike. I knew the road ahead would be hard, but I was ready to fight for my family's safety, no matter what it cost. The next morning, the shelter was buzzing with quiet activity as women prepared for work, children got ready for school, and staff moved through the halls with gentle efficiency. I watched Rochelle help Jamal and Nia with their breakfast, her hands still trembling but her voice steadier than it had been in days. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes but also a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we were finally safe. After breakfast, Miss Angela met with us again, this time with a police officer and a social worker. They listened as I described what I'd seen in the basement, the trunk, the cash, the list with the children's names. Rochelle handed over the photos I'd taken and the threatening messages from Darius. The officer's face grew serious as he took notes, promising to open an investigation and keep a patrol car near the shelter for the next few days. You did the right thing, Miss Carter, he said, his voice kind but firm. We'll do everything we can to keep you safe. The social worker, Miss Janine, explained the next steps. Filing for a restraining order, documenting every incident, and preparing for a possible court hearing. She also offered counseling for the kids, who were still jumpy at every loud noise. I thanked her, feeling a mix of relief and dread. That afternoon I called Mr. Henry again, and he told me Darius had come by the house a third time, pounding on the door and shouting my name. He's getting desperate, Geneva. You stay put, you hear. I promised I would, but my nerves were frayed. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, Jamal whispered, Grandma, is Darius going to find us? I hugged him tight, fighting back tears. No, baby. Grandma's here. Nobody's going to hurt you. Rochelle sat with me on the edge of the bed, her voice trembling. Mama, I'm scared. What if he finds us? What if he tries to take the kids? I took her hand, squeezing it hard. We're not alone, Rochelle. We have the shelter, the police, and each other. We're stronger than he thinks. As the shelter quieted for the night, I sat by the window, watching the moon rise over the city, and whispered a prayer for strength. I thought about all the years I'd spent believing that family meant sacrifice, that love meant putting everyone else first. But now I realize that real love sometimes means running, sometimes means fighting, and always means protecting the ones who can't protect themselves. I promised myself that I would not let fear rule my life, that I would not let Darius win. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. I knew Darius was out there, angry and desperate, and I braced myself for whatever he might do next. The battle for my family's safety was far from over, but I was ready to face it, one day, one prayer, one act of courage at a time. The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork, whispered conversations, and anxious glances at the shelter's front door. Rochelle and I met with the shelter's legal advocate, who helped us file for a restraining order against Darius and walked us through every step of the process. I watched my daughter sign her name with a trembling hand, her jaw set in determination, and I felt a surge of pride mixed with sorrow for all she'd endured. The kids started seeing Miss Janine, the social worker, who gently coaxed Jamal and Nia to talk about their fears and dreams. Jamal drew pictures of superheroes protecting their family, while Nia clung to her teddy bear, her eyes wide and watchful. I tried to keep things as normal as possible, reading bedtime stories, making pancakes for breakfast, and singing the old gospel songs my own mother used to sing when the world felt too heavy. But every time the phone rang or a car slowed down outside, my heart would leap into my throat. One afternoon, Miss Angela pulled me aside, her face serious. Geneva, the police found evidence in your daughter's basement. Stolen electronics, fake IDs, and a list of names. Darius is wanted for questioning, but he's disappeared. We need you to be extra careful. I nodded, my mind racing with worry. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, Jamal asked, Grandma, when can we go home? I hugged him close, fighting back tears. Soon, baby. When it's safe. Rochelle sat with me in the common room, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama, I feel like I'm living someone else's life. I never thought I'd end up here, hiding from my own husband. I took her hand, squeezing it tight. You're not hiding, Rochelle. You're surviving. You're protecting your babies. That's the bravest thing you can do. The next morning I woke to a knock at our door. My heart pounded as I peeked through the peephole, but it was only Miss Lila, holding a bag of groceries and a smile that could light up the darkest room. I brought you some of your favorite tea, Geneva, and a little something for the kids. She handed Jamal a new coloring book and Nia a soft, knitted blanket. The kids' faces lit up, and for a moment the shelter felt like home. As we sat together, sipping tea and sharing stories, I realized how much I'd missed the simple comfort of friendship. Miss Lila promised to keep an eye on our old house and to call if she saw anything suspicious. That evening, as the sun set and the shelter quieted, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life. I thought about all the women in the shelter, each one with her own story of pain and survival, each one fighting for a better future. I whispered a prayer for all of us, for the strength to keep going, for the courage to believe that better days were coming. But as I drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed with a new message, this time from an unknown number. You can't hide forever, Geneva. I'll find you. My blood ran cold, but I refused to let fear take root. I showed the message to Miss Angela, who promised to alert the police. You're safe here, Geneva. We won't let anything happen to you or your family. I nodded, holding my head high. I was Miss Geneva Carter and I was done running. Whatever Darius tried next, I would face it with open eyes and an unbreakable spirit. The fight for my family's safety was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The next morning the shelter felt different, tense, as if everyone was holding their breath. I tried to keep the routine normal for the kids, making oatmeal and singing softly as I braided Nia's hair, but my mind was on high alert. Rochelle was quieter than usual, her eyes darting to the window every time a car passed. Miss Angela stopped by our room after breakfast, her voice low. Geneva, the police have been by your old house. Darius hasn't shown up, but they found more evidence in the basement, enough to open a full investigation. They're taking this seriously, but you need to be careful. If you see anything, call me or the police right away. I nodded, my heart pounding, but I forced a smile for the kids. We're safe here, babies. Grandma's got you. That afternoon, the shelter held a group session for the women. I almost didn't go, but Miss Lila encouraged me. You need to let it out, Geneva. You can't carry all this alone. I sat in the circle, listening as other women shared their stories, of running, of fear, of hope. When it was my turn, I told them about the night in the basement, about the trunk, the cash, the list with my grandbabies' names. I told them about the threats, the running, the guilt of not seeing the signs sooner. The women nodded, some with tears in their eyes, and I realized I wasn't alone. After the session, Miss Janine, the social worker, pulled me aside. You're stronger than you know, Geneva. You did everything right. But you need to let yourself heal too. I promised I'd try. That evening, Rochelle and I sat on the edge of our beds, talking quietly while the kids colored on the floor. Mama, I'm scared he'll find us. I keep thinking about what he might do. I hugged her, my own fear simmering beneath the surface. We're not going to let him win, Rochelle. We have the law, the shelter, and each other. We're not alone. Just as I was tucking the kids in, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Darius, this one more desperate. I just want to see my kids. Let me talk to them, Geneva. You owe me that. I showed the message to Miss Angela, who shook her head. Don't respond. We'll add it to the file. That night I lay awake, listening to the city outside, the hum of traffic, the distant wail of a siren. I thought about all the women in the shelter, about Rochelle, about the kids. I thought about the strength it took to run, to start over, to keep fighting even when you're tired. I whispered a prayer for courage, for peace, for the day when we could finally go home. But I knew Darius wasn't finished. The next battle was coming, and I was ready to face it, whatever it took. I was Miss Geneva Carter, and I would not let fear steal my family's future. The next day, the shelter staff gathered us for a meeting, their faces serious as they explained that Darius had been spotted in the neighborhood, asking questions and showing people a photo of Rochelle and the kids. My heart pounded as I listened, but I kept my face calm for Jamal and Nia, who were busy drawing superheroes at the table. Miss Angela assured us that the police were increasing patrols, and that the shelter's security cameras were being monitored around the clock. We're not taking any chances, Geneva. If you see anything, even a car you don't recognize, you let us know. I nodded, my mind racing with worry and resolve. That afternoon, Rochelle and I sat in the small courtyard, the kids playing nearby, and talked about what would come next. Mama, I don't know if I can ever go back to that house, she whispered, her voice trembling. Every corner reminds me of what I survived. I squeezed her hand, my own eyes stinging. You don't have to go back, baby. We'll find a new place, somewhere safe, somewhere you and the kids can start over. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I just want them to be happy, Mama. I want them to feel safe. I hugged her, feeling the weight of her pain and the fierce love that had kept us both going. That evening, Miss Lila stopped by with a casserole and a stack of children's books. You're not alone, Geneva. The whole church is praying for you. And if Darius tries anything, he'll have to go through all of us. Her words made me smile, the warmth of community wrapping around me like a blanket. But as night fell, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail from Darius. His voice was slurred, angry, and desperate. You think you can hide from me? You think you can take my kids and just disappear? I'll find you, Geneva. I always do. I played the message for Miss Angela, who immediately called the police. He's escalating, Geneva. We're going to move you to a different shelter, just to be safe. The next morning we packed our things, the kids confused but trusting as we loaded into a van with tinted windows. The new shelter was farther from the city, quieter, surrounded by trees and the sound of birdsong. It felt like a fresh start, but I knew we couldn't let our guard down. That night, as I tucked Jamal and Nia into bed, I whispered a promise. Grandma's got you, babies. No one's going to hurt you now. Rochelle sat beside me, her voice soft but determined. Thank you, Mama, for everything. I hugged her tight, my heart full of love and fear and hope. As I lay in bed listening to the quiet, I realized that survival wasn't just about running. It was about standing your ground, about building a new life from the ashes of the old. I was Miss Geneva Carter, and I was ready for whatever came next. The fight for my family's safety was far from over, but I knew we would face it together one day at a time. The new shelter was tucked away on a quiet street, surrounded by tall oaks and the kind of silence that felt both comforting and strange after so many nights of fear. The staff welcomed us with gentle smiles, showing us to a small but cozy room with 2 beds and a crib for Nia. Rochelle unpacked slowly, her movements careful, as if she was afraid the peace might shatter at any moment. I tried to keep the kids busy, reading stories and teaching Jamal how to draw birds from the window, but my mind was always half listening for footsteps in the hall or the ring of my phone. Miss Angela called to check in, her voice a lifeline. Geneva, the police are still looking for Darius. They've put out a warrant for his arrest, and your restraining order is active in every county. You're safe here, but stay alert. I thanked her, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. That afternoon, the shelter hosted a group session for the women. I almost didn't go, but Rochelle squeezed my hand. Let's try, Mama. Maybe it'll help. We sat in a circle, listening as women shared stories of running, of hiding, of starting over. When it was my turn, I told them about the night in the basement, about the trunk, the cash, the list with my grandbabies' names. I told them about the fear, the guilt, and the moment I decided to run. The women nodded, some with tears in their eyes, and I realized I wasn't alone. After the session, a woman named Carla approached me, her voice trembling. Thank you for sharing, Miss Geneva. I thought I was the only one. I hugged her, feeling the old ache of loneliness begin to fade. That evening, Rochelle and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset behind the trees. Mama, do you think we'll ever really be free of him? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I wrapped my arm around her, holding her close. We're already freer than we were, baby. Every day we choose ourselves, we get a little stronger. As the stars blinked to life, Jamal and Nia curled up beside us, their breathing slow and peaceful. For the first time in months, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we could build a new life here. But as I tucked the kids into bed, my phone buzzed with a new message, this time from an unknown number. You can't hide forever, Geneva. I'll find you. My blood ran cold, but I refused to let fear take root. I showed the message to the shelter staff, who promised to alert the police. You're safe here, Miss Geneva. We won't let anything happen to you or your family. I nodded, holding my head high. I was Miss Geneva Carter and I was done running. Whatever Darius tried next, I would face it with open eyes and an unbreakable spirit. The fight for my family's safety was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The days at the new shelter settled into a gentle rhythm, the kind that slowly stitches a broken heart back together. Rochelle started attending counseling sessions twice a week, her voice growing stronger with each one, and I saw a new light in her eyes, a glimmer of hope I hadn't seen in years. Jamal and Nia made friends with the other children, their laughter echoing through the halls as they played tag and built forts out of blankets. I found comfort in the small routines, making breakfast, folding laundry, and sitting on the porch with a cup of tea as the sun rose over the trees. The staff encouraged me to join a support group for grandmothers raising grandchildren, and though I was hesitant at first, I soon found myself surrounded by women who understood my fears, my guilt, and my fierce love. We shared stories, offered advice, and reminded each other that we were not alone. One afternoon, Miss Angela stopped by with good news. Geneva, the police have found Darius. He was picked up trying to pawn stolen electronics in another county. He's in custody now, and the DA is building a strong case against him. Relief washed over me, so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. Rochelle hugged me tight, her body shaking with silent sobs. It's over, Mama. We're safe. That night we celebrated with a simple dinner. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and sweet tea. The kids danced around the room, their laughter a balm to my soul. As I tucked them into bed, Jamal whispered, Grandma, can we stay here forever? I kissed his forehead, my heart full. We'll find a home of our own soon, baby. Somewhere safe, somewhere happy. The next morning I received a letter from Miss Lila, full of encouragement and love. You are the bravest woman I know, Geneva. The whole church is praying for you. When you're ready, we'll help you start fresh. I read the letter aloud to Rochelle, and we both cried, grateful for the community that had carried us through the darkest days. As the weeks passed, Rochelle found a job at a local daycare, and I started volunteering at the shelter, helping other women find their strength. The staff asked me to speak at a community event, and though I was nervous, I agreed. Standing at the podium, I shared our story, the fear, the escape, the healing, and watched as women in the audience nodded, their eyes shining with understanding. Afterward, a grandmother approached me, her voice trembling. Thank you, Miss Geneva. You gave me the courage to protect my own family. That night, as I sat on the porch with Rochelle and the kids, the stars bright above us, I realized that our journey had become a beacon for others. I was Miss Geneva Carter, and I had finally learned that true strength comes not from running, but from standing tall in the face of fear. The fight for my family's safety was over, but the work of healing and helping others had just begun. And as I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, for the second chance we'd been given, for the community that had lifted us up, and for the peace that had finally found its way home. The weeks that followed brought a new kind of hope, the kind that grows quietly in the cracks left by old pain. Rochelle settled into her job at the daycare, her confidence blossoming as she cared for children who reminded her of Jamal and Nia. The kids thrived in their new routine, their laughter ringing through the shelter's halls, their nightmares slowly fading as the days grew longer and brighter. I found myself becoming a fixture at the shelter, helping in the kitchen, reading stories to the little ones, and offering a listening ear to women who arrived with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. The support group for grandmothers became my anchor, a circle of wisdom and strength where we shared recipes, prayers, and the hard-earned lessons of survival. One afternoon, Miss Angela pulled me aside, her eyes shining with pride. "Geneva, the DA wants you and Rochelle to testify at Darius's hearing. Your evidence and your courage have made all the difference. He's facing real consequences now." I felt a surge of anxiety but also a deep sense of purpose. "We'll do it," I said, my voice steady. "He needs to know he can't hurt us anymore." The day of the hearing arrived, and as Rochelle and I sat in the courthouse waiting room, I held her hand, feeling the old fear rise up but refusing to let it take root. When we took the stand, I spoke the truth about the night in the basement, the threats, the fear that had haunted us for years. Rochelle's voice was clear and strong as she described the abuse, the control, and the moment she decided to run. The judge listened carefully, and when the verdict came, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Darius was sentenced to prison, and a restraining order was put in place to protect us for good. After the hearing, the shelter staff and our new friends gathered to celebrate. There was music, food, and a sense of relief that filled the air like sunlight after a storm. Jamal and Nia danced with the other children, their faces alight with joy, and Rochelle hugged me tight, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We did it, Mama. We're free." That night, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, I thought about the journey we'd taken, the fear, the running, the courage it took to start over. I realized that our story was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, about the power of community, and about the strength that comes from choosing to fight for yourself and the ones you love. As the stars blinked to life above the shelter, I whispered a prayer of thanks for the second chance we'd been given, for the women who had become my sisters, and for the peace that had finally found its way home. The fight was over, but the work of healing and helping others was just beginning. I was Miss Geneva Carter, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days after the hearing felt like the first true spring after a long, bitter winter. Rochelle and I moved out of the shelter and into a small, sunlit apartment on the edge of town, the kind of place where you could hear birds in the morning and children laughing in the courtyard. The first night, as we unpacked boxes and made up the beds, Jamal and Nia ran from room to room, their voices echoing with excitement. Rochelle stood in the kitchen, her hands on her hips, and smiled at me with a look I hadn't seen in years, hopeful, unburdened, and free. "Mama, I never thought we'd get here," she whispered, her eyes shining. "I never thought I'd feel safe again." I hugged her, my own heart full. "You did this, baby. You chose to fight. You chose to run when it mattered most." We spent the next few weeks settling in, making the apartment our own. I planted herbs on the windowsill, hung family photos on the walls, and filled the rooms with the scent of fresh bread and laughter. Rochelle started taking classes at the community college, determined to build a better future for herself and the kids. Jamal joined the local soccer team, and Nia made friends at the playground, her giggles a constant reminder that children are more resilient than we ever give them credit for. I continued volunteering at the shelter, sharing my story with new arrivals and helping them find their own strength. The support group for grandmothers grew, and soon we were hosting potlucks and prayer circles in our apartment, the living room filled with women who had learned to turn pain into power. One evening, Miss Lila stopped by with a basket of fresh peaches and a letter from the church. "They want you to speak at the women's conference next month, Geneva. Your story has inspired so many." I felt a surge of pride and humility, knowing that my journey had become a beacon for others. That night, as I sat on the porch with Rochelle, watching the sun set over the city, I realized that our story was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, about the power of community, and about the legacy we were building for the next generation. Rochelle squeezed my hand, her voice soft. "Thank you, Mama, for never giving up on me, for teaching me what it means to be strong." I smiled, my heart full. "We're strong together, baby. That's what family is." As the stars blinked to life above us, I whispered a prayer of gratitude for the second chance we'd been given, for the women who had become my sisters, and for the peace that had finally found its way home. The journey wasn't over, but I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, with open hearts and unbreakable spirits. I was Miss Geneva Carter, and I had finally learned that true strength comes not from running, but from standing tall in the face of fear, and from loving yourself enough to choose a better life. The morning of my 66th birthday dawned with a gentle breeze and the golden light of a new season streaming through our little apartment's kitchen window, casting soft patterns on the table where I'd spent so many mornings worrying, hoping, and finally healing. Rochelle and the kids woke me with breakfast in bed. Pancakes shaped like hearts, a mug of strong coffee, and a card covered in Jamal's careful handwriting and Nia's wild, colorful scribbles. "Happy birthday, Grandma. We love you." Rochelle hugged me tight, her eyes shining with gratitude and peace. "You saved us, Mama. You gave us a new life." I smiled, my heart full, and for the first time in years I felt truly celebrated. Not for what I could give, but for who I was. After breakfast, we spent the day in the park, flying kites and laughing as the kids chased each other through the grass. Miss Lila joined us with a basket of fried chicken and sweet tea, and soon our little picnic grew as women from the shelter, neighbors and friends gathered around, drawn by the warmth of community and the promise of a new beginning. As the sun dipped low, Rochelle stood and raised a toast. To my mother, Geneva Carter, who taught me that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what's right, even when you are. You showed me how to fight for my family, how to forgive, and how to hope again. The crowd echoed her words, and I felt a wave of gratitude so deep it nearly brought me to tears. That evening, as the house quieted and the kids drifted off to sleep, I sat on the porch with Rochelle and Miss Lila, watching the stars blink to life above the city. Rochelle squeezed my hand, her voice soft. "Mama, do you ever regret any of it? The running, the fear, the fight?" I thought for a long moment, then shook my head. "No, baby. Every trial, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt brought us here. And here is exactly where we're meant to be." Miss Lila smiled, her eyes twinkling. "You're a beacon, Geneva. You turned your pain into purpose, and you gave us all a place to belong." As the night deepened, I whispered a prayer of thanks for the journey, for the people who had stood by me, and for the peace that had finally found its way home. This is my true story. My name is Miss Geneva Carter, and if you've ever felt trapped, afraid, or alone, I hope you know that healing is possible, that second chances are real, and that you are never too old to reclaim your joy. Thank you for listening to my journey. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. And remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is stand up to the people you once trusted most. But if my story has taught me anything, it's that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when your hands are shaking. I learned that a grandmother's love can move mountains, and that you are never too old to start over, protect your family, or find your own peace. If you were in my shoes, would you have run? Or would you have stayed and hoped things would change? Have you ever had to risk everything to protect someone you love? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Maybe your words will help another woman find her strength too. Thank you for listening to my journey. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. And remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Until next time, this is Miss Geneva Carter.